Hi again, grade 3s. I hope you had a great weekend. Today, what we're going to be doing is talking a little bit more about that fight, flight, and freeze response that we were looking at last week. So our learning goal today is to explain how the brain responds, again, that fight, flight, or freeze response, when it thinks there's a threat. In order to be successful, at the end, you should be able to tell me what survival mode is, and tell how the body reacts when the brain senses that there's some danger. So let's recap what we've already learned. Last week we were talking about the fight, flight, and freeze response, and we found that that was a response to whenever we're in danger. That was developed thousands and thousands of years ago, before we had cities, before we had farms, when people were just hunting around, kind of like animals in the wild. Those three types of responses kept us safe. They kept us alive. They helped keep us safe from predators, like this saber-toothed tiger that you can see in the picture. The thing is, though, they are so good, they work so well, that they've stayed with us to this day. We still have them. They still sometimes go off when they're not actually needed. And so yesterday, or I should say last week, what I asked you to do was think about a time where you were scared and talk about how the fight, flight, or freeze response kind of kicked in for you. Now, sometimes that fight, flight, or freeze response works too well, like I just said. Sometimes people are often afraid of little creatures or things that they may see every day. So for some people, a dog on the sidewalk may be a reason to either cross the street to get away from the dog, or to even just kind of go to the side of the sidewalk while the dog passes. For some people, a mouse or a rat may cause them to sort of jump in the air and shriek or scream as it runs away. Sometimes a spider can kind of cause people to get the kind of shivers up their spine. So a lot of times, even though they're small creatures or there's not really a danger, our fight, flight, or freeze response will kick in. And even though those things aren't really an immediate danger to us, well, the dog might be, we'll talk about that in a second, all of those things are designed to keep us alive. They're designed to keep us, or allow us to survive. So that's what our survival mode is. Those responses we have to spiders or mice or other things that aren't really a danger to us, it's kind of like a false alarm in our brain, and it causes a kind of panic, and it makes us either freeze or want to get away from that, which is the flight response. So here's your $1 million phrase for the day: physiological responses. All that means is it's the body's physical reaction, or the way that our body works when our brain triggers that fight, flight, or freeze response. So when that alarm is triggered, what usually happens is that we'll start to breathe more quickly, and our heart starts to beat a lot faster than it normally does. Usually, or sometimes I should say, what happens is our muscles tense up. Sometimes people begin to perspire, they begin to sweat. Their body temperature rises, so they start feeling hot. They become more alert, or we become more alert. Believe it or not, we're able to see a lot better, and we're going to talk a little bit about those different things that happen, well, right now. So all of those things kind of depend on what the response is, whether it's a flight response, a fight response, or a freeze response. So I mentioned eyes. Let's start there. When we engage, or when our brain senses that there's some danger, what happens is our eyes get wider. If you've ever seen somebody in a TV show or a movie get surprised, what do you usually see happen to their face? Well, their eyes get bigger. The reason for that is because our brain wants us to be able to see. It wants to get as much information as it possibly can. So the eyes get a lot larger, and it allows the brain to get more information. It can see things coming. When we talk about muscles tensing up, the reason for that is because the muscles are getting ready to do something. They're getting ready to either fight, to take care of what's coming, or getting ready to run. So obviously, if you're getting ready, if your brain says, okay, we should stay and fight, what happens is your arm muscles start to tense up. If your brain is like, oh no, we've got to get out of here, your thigh, your leg muscles start to tense up, and they get themselves ready to run. Depending on the response, your body might get really hot, and so you start to perspire. It's your body's response to try and cool you down, to try and keep you calm. But then the question is, okay, well, why does your body get hot in the first place? Well, again, because your heart starts beating a lot more quickly, it's sending blood to different parts of your body, and that raises your body temperature. It helps to raise your body temperature. So in order to make sure that everything kind of keeps safe, your body starts to perspire to try and cool you down. So then, why does your heart start beating faster? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. In order to fight or flight, to get out of there, the muscles in your body that are used for those things, whether it's your arms to fight or your legs to run away, they need blood. They need more oxygen so that they can work better. So your heart starts to beat faster to get blood to those muscles that are needed. One of the things that some people tend to feel is that their feet might get cold. If you've ever heard the expression getting cold feet, this has something to do with it. Your hands might also get cold. The reason for that is your body is actually taking blood away from things that aren't necessarily needed and putting them into things that are. So if you're trying to run away, for instance, the heart might say, okay, and the brain might say, okay, the hands don't need a whole lot of blood. We're going to take the blood that we would normally send to the hands, and we're going to send it to the leg muscles because we've got to get out of here really quick. So all that is to say that to make sure that your body has the energy that it needs to fight or flight, it's going to transfer energy from systems that aren't really needed to systems that are needed.